Testing, testing, testing. Alright, we're running. We're rolling now. There we are. We're rolling. Alright, part 1105, Procedures and Implementation of Environmental Laws. 105, 1105, on purpose 11052, Responsibility Administrative of 11053, Information Systems 11054, Definition 11055, Instrument, Determinative Criteria 11056, Classification Action 11057, Environmental Reports 1158, Historical Reports 11059, Coastal Zone Management Act Requirements 110510, Board Procedures 110511, the transmittal of applicant reports, and 1105 12 sample newspaper notices of abandonment exemption cases. Or 1105 purpose of the rules of the design ensure the adequate consideration of environmental energy factor for the board decision making process pursuant to the National Environmental Policy Act at the Title 42 U.S. Standard 44322 Energy Policy Conservation Act, Title U.S. Standard Code C362B. Laws include the National Historic Preservation Act of Title 16 U.S. Science Code 470 Coastal Zone Management Act Title 16 United States Code 14 Endangered Species Act Title 16 U.S. Standard Code 1531. Alright, 1105 the responsible administrator of the Rural Director's Office of Environmental Analysis delegated by the authority to sign on behalf of the Board of Memorandum of Agreement entered into the pursuant of Title 36-805E4 regarding the historical preservation matter of the Director of the Office of Environmental Analysis responsible for the preparation of that of those rules delegated by the authority provide interpretation board and national environmental policy at the process of the remainder of the initial decision of the waiver of the modification of the rules for the individual proceeding to recommend the redaction of environmental reports. Non-compliant with these rules, the delegated authority shall be used only when the matter consistent with the board policy of the board will be able to of the right. 1153 information assisted information of the rules of the board environmental history review process available writing or calling of the Office of Environmental Analysis 1154 of the regulation of the Council of Environmental Quality along with definitions of biological segment of the energy subtitle 4 Title 49 U.S. Standard Amendment the applicant person to action with the action pending notice of the exam any other modes initiated or single service paper environmental act. EA means concise public document for the which the board is responsible for the information to determine whether to prepare the environmental impact statement or to make the finding of the significant environmental impact. Environmental documentation means the environmental impact statement of the environmental assets. Environmental impact statement EIS, but detailed this in the core of the National Environmental Policy 42, 43, 32C, major federal action of significant effect on the environmental report means document file adding that provides notice of the proposed action with the environmental impose and the reasonable alternative to the action environmental report may be in form of a proposed draft of the environmental assessment or proposed draft environmental impact statement filing. Means the request of Surface Transportation Board Authority whether the applicant made a petition notice of the exemption any of the other means initiates formal board proceeding of the environmental analysis OEA means the office of the preparer of the board environmental documents for the analysis. Third party consultant means the independent contractor liable the application of the works of the Office of the Environmental Analysis, approval of the Office of Environmental Analysis, direction to prepare the necessary environmental documentation for the third party of the consultant that must affect act of the behalf of the board. The railroad may participate in selecting process as well for the subsequent preparation of environmental documents. How to avoid that any of the permissible conflict with the interest, essentially with any financial other interest or outcome of the railroad sponsored project of the railroad may not be reasonable for selection or control of the independent contractors. 1105.5 Determination criteria. Determining whether the major federal action as with the terms of defined by the Council of Environmental Quality, Title 42 FR 1508-18 with the potential for the effect significantly with quality of human environmental boards to gather the definition significantly in Title 42 FR 1508-27 finding surface transportation not within the surface transportation jurisdiction does not require the environmental analysis of the National Environmental Policy Act. The historic review of the National Historic Preservation Act. The environmental laws are not triggered if wherever the Surface Transportation Board action for the more than ministerial act for the processing of the proposed the Northeast Railway Service Act and statutory authorized interim travel the user arrangement of Title 16 U.S. Standard Code 1247D. Financial assistance arrangement of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 10904 and for finally no environmental analysis necessary abandonments they are authorized for the bankruptcy core of the transfer rail lines under plans of reorganization where the or function is merely the advisory of the Title 11 U.S. Standard Code 1166, 1170, and 1172. Classification actions 1105.6 environmental impact statement is normally prepared with the rail construction proposals other than described in paragraph B1 of this section. Environmental assessment with normally be prepared with the following proposed action: construction connecting track with existing all rail right-of-ways, landward connection railroads, amendment of the railway line proposed with the Northeast Railway, service the deck with the bankruptcy act, discontinue with the passenger service the freight, discontinue with the freight service the modified certificate until 49 CFR 1152 21. Discontinue with the track rates with the effective line, continue with operated acquisition lease operation until 49 U.S. Standard Code 10901 to 902 to 907. Consolidated Manager Acquisition Control Act of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 11323 14303. If it will result either in operational changes that would exceed the threshold established in 11057E 4 and 5, or action that would normally require environmental documentation of the construction and abandonment, the rule, policy, and statement, legislative proposal of the potential and significant environmental impacts, and any other proceeding not listed in the paragraph A, C of this section. No environmental documentation will normally be prepared, although the historical report may be required under section 1105(8) of the following actions. Any action does not require significant change of the carrier of the action. Change does not exceed the threshold established in section 11057. E4 and 5, E4 or 5, including but not limited to the following actions, might meet the requirements of acquisition lease for the operation of Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 10901, 10902, 10907. Consolidation major acquisition control of the Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 11323 to 14303. It does not come within subsection B4 of this section. Transaction involved with the corporate chain as of the change of the ownership of the operative of the instruments of the security reorganization include to grant authority to hold position as an office director, declaratory orders of interpretation, clarification, operation authority, substitution of the application of the name of the change of the waiver of lease, interchange, regulation, polling, authorization, approval of the rate of the agreement, bureau arrangements, and approval of the ship of antitrust immunity, determination of the fact of the competition rate, fair, and tariff action, common use of the rail terminals, trackage rights, discontinuing the rail freight service with a modified certificate issued within Title 49 CFR 1150 21. Discontinue the track rights effective in the line will continue with the reoperated rulemaking policy statement of the legislative proposal with a non-potential significant environmental impacts. The board may reclassify with the modify of these requirements and individual proceed for the action generally required with no environmental documentation of the board to decide with the particular action of potential significant environmental impact and that there of the applicant should provide environmental report for the environmental assessment and the environmental information system that will be prepared with the action generally required. The environmental assessment board will aim to prepare the full environmental information system where provide the significant impact with particular with the proposal high enough for the environmental information system. Alternatively, the rail construction applicant to see the demonstrated support of the determination information of the in space with 11057E, then the environmental assessment rather than the environmental information system will be significant, and because the particular proposal is not likely to have significant environmental impact, and of course the reclassification of rating of the real construction should be proposed, and the proof filing notice required in 110510A, and request waiver of notice of the period classification section apply with regard to the actions proposed with the application position notice of the exemption, any other means of the initial formal board or proceeding. Part 1105 the refined environmental performance filing applicant with the action deadline 1156A and B, A or B must be submitted to the board with prior to his application position with the warrant notice with exemption except the provided paragraph B with advance with the discontinue with the environmental report. Proposed action contain the information set forth in the E section. The environmental report must be filled with the board electronically. At least 2 days before the filing of the prior to the filing with the board notice exemption with the exemption of any of the application abandonment of the discontinued application must serve with a copy of the environmental report on the state clearinghouse of each of the state involved with the other state and the equivalent agency state has no clearance house. The environmental protection agency each of the state involved with the state coastal zone and management agency where the proposed activity would affect the land and water use of the state of coastal zones. The head of each of the county with the comparable political entity include any of the Indian reservation though which of the line goes to the appropriate regional office of the environmental protection agency, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering, National Park Service, the National Reserve Conservation, National Geodetic Survey, formerly known as the Coast Guard Geodetic Survey, but is designated agent with the National Geodetic Survey with the U.S. Geological Services Survey. Alright, any other agencies that have been involved with preparing the report, certification of the environmental report, the application must certify they have sent with a copy of the environmental report to the agency listed within the time period specified by the paragraph of the E of the section that is involved with the appropriate agency for preparing the report. The cancellation should be made with the far enough to advance the afford the agency the responsible opportunity to provide the meaningful input with the finally in every abandonment exemption case, but the applicant shall certify with the published newspapers general circulation E for the county through the line, passing notices alerts to the public of the proposed amendment if available to reuse the alternatives and how to make the participants serve the Board. Documentation, any writing of the response received the agency will contact the provider preparing the environmental report that has been attached with the report. Only oral response from the agency shall briefly summarize the report, name the title of the telephone numbers of the person tax should be supplied with a copy of the appropriate solicitation and any of the reference material relied upon. Also should provide with the content of the environmental response report shall include with all the information specified in the paragraphs except for the applicant and explain with any of the portion as are inapplicable. The historic report required in the 1105-8 with the environmental report should also have the historic report required in this section. Her proposed action and alternatives described the proposed action include the commodity of the transport and plan with the disposition, if any, of the rail line with the other structure that may be involved in any positive of the chain of the current of the operation of the maintenance practice, also describe any reasonable alternative of the proposed action, include the reasonable detailed map of the drawings and clearly delineate the project. Transportation system describe the effect of the proposed action with the regional and local transportation system that have the estimate of the amount of the traffic, the passenger rate, and that will differ with the other transportation system over the result of the proposed action. Land use, but based on the constellation local, the regional plan with the agency review. The official with the plan with the documents prepared with the such agencies say with a proposed action that consistent with the existing land use of the prescribed inconsistencies the based on the consult of the U.S. Conservation Service to the state effect with the proposed action any of the primary or agricultural land and act with the effect with the land with where you the designated of the coastal zone include the coastal zone information 11059 and proposed action with the abandonment of the state whether or not right away with the substitute of the alternative public title 49 U.S. Standard Code 1090 to explain why we're interested to describe the effect of the proposed action with the transportation energy service to describe the effect of the proposed action with the recyclable commodities state whether the proposed action will result in an increase with the decrease of the overall energy with efficiency. Explain why, if the proposed action will cover the diversion of the rail motor carrier with more than 1,000 rail car loads, an average of 50 rail car loads per mile per year are part of the effective line with the quantity of the result of the net change with the energy with the consumption and with the show of the data of the methodology with the derive with the figure given the minimum of the production of the repetitive data and the information overall energy with the efficiency 11057 E430 and need not to be supplied with a more detailed information. 11057 E44 is required. Error of the proposed action will result in either an increase of the rail traffic at least 10% of the measure for the growth of ton miles annually, increase over the light at least 8 trains a day with 8 trains a day on any segment of the rail line effective with the proposal. Increase of the rail car yard activity at least 100% measure for the car load activity average rate increase the truck traffic more than 10% of the average daily traffic to 50 vehicles a day on affected road segment and quantity of the anticipated effect of the air emission for the proposal of 49 U.S. Standard Code 10901 or 10502. The construction of the new line will reinstitute the service line over previously abandoned. The only 8 train of the day. The provision subject section 518 it will apply with the proposed action effect of the Class 1 non-attainment of the area under the Clean Air Act will result in either increase the rail traffic at least 50% measure for the gross ton miles annually with the increase of at least 3 trains a day in any segment of the rail line, increase of the rail yard activity with at least 20% measure for the car load activity, average increase of the truck traffic more than 10% of the average daily traffic of 50 vehicles a day of the given the road segment the same in the weather the expected increase of the emission within the parameters established with the state implementation plan have the rail construction under Title 49 U.S. Standard Code 10901 or 49 U.S. Standard Code 10502. Or in case of involve the reinstituting the service over previously abandoned other 3 train a day with the threshold of the item shall apply. If transportation ozone depletion material with nitrogen oxide freon contemplate with the the materials and quantity of the frequency with the safety practices included in any of the speed restriction and application safety record to examine available on derailments, accidents, spills, and contingency plan to deal with the accident spill the likely with the accident release of the ozone depleting materials event of the collision or derailment noise. If any of the thresholds identified in item 5.1 of the section surpass the state whether the proposed action will cover the incremental increase of the noise level of the decimals and or more increase the noise level of 65 decibels or greater, identify the sensitive report in schools, libraries, hospitals, residency, retirement communities, nursing homes, any project area quantity of these noises, increase the receptive of the thresholds or path of safety, describe any of the effects of proposed action with public health safety, include with the vehicle delay with the railroad grade crossing the hazard materials are expected to transport it, identify the material, the quantity, the frequency of the surface of water, chemical of the being is transported, mixed with the could react with the form of the hazardous compound with the safety procedure practices include any of the speed restrictions, the applicable safety record, the extent of the available on with the derailment accident, the hazard spill, but continue planning to deal with the accident spill likelihood to external relief of the hazard material, if then there any of the known of the hazard wave of the sites where the been known the hazard material speed of the right of way to identify the location over the sites of the type of the hazard material involved, biological resource behavior on Constellation U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Whether the proposed action likely would adversely affect the endangered, threatened species of the area designated with the critical habitat, if so described, affects state whether the wildlife sanctuary, refugees, and national state park of the forests will be effectively describing the effects. Water. Based on the Constellation of State Water Quality Official, the other would proposed action consistent with the applicable federal, state, local water quality standards describing consistent any consistency. Based on consultation with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineering, state whether the permits under Section 404 of the Clean Water Act and or required proposed action whether the designated wetlands of 100-year flood plans will be effective to describe the effect. For the state whether the permits under Section 402 of the Clean Water Act are required for the proposed action, applicants should be in contact with the United States Environmental Protection Agency, State Environmental Protection Agency, equivalent agent. See if there is unsure whether the permits are required with the proposed mitigation to describe an action for the proposed mitigate with the environmental impact that indicated with the proposed mitigation and is an appropriate additional information rail construction. The following additional information should include the rail construction proposal will include the connecting track construction. They prescribe the proposed route with the state of the country with the subdivision, include the plan view with a scale not to exceed 1 in 24,000 or 7.5 minutes. The U.S. Coast Guard quadrant map clearly showing with the relationship with the existing transportation network, including location of all the highway road crossings and the right-of-way according to the ownership of land use required to describe the any alternative route with considering no-build alternative to why would be applicable, explain why were selected, describe the construction, including the effect of the human environmental labor, the force, the requirement of the hungry to borrow, if any of the Earth's estimates. Are described in detail the rail operation conducted upon the line with include the estimate of the freight car loads and tonnage of the transport of the anticipated delay, annual number of the train, movement number of the cars for the train, the type of the cars, mode of the requirements proposed to be with the labor, the force of the proposed maintenance, the way of the unpractical, the describe the effect, include with the indirect with the downline impact with the need of the diverted traffic over the line, if the threshold governing energy, noise, and air impact, 11057, the E4, 5, or 6. Air met. Describe the effect of the include with the impact of the essential public service of the fire police, ambulance, neighborhood, school, for the public road, for the adjoining property of the community, for the transverse in the line. Discuss this sociality impact with including expect the chain with employment during the after construction. Additional information for the board may require the applicants to submit the additional information regarding the environmental energy effect of the proposed action, and the waiver of the board may waive the modified for the whole and part with the provided addition section with the railroad applicant showing with the information required is not necessary for the board to evaluate the environmental impact of the proposed action. 1105A. Historic reports. Following the application proposed identified 11056A or B, the action 11056C will result in the lease for the transfer sale of the railroad line sites for the structure that must be submitted with the application petition with the note that the historic report is Paragraph D, with the second unless expected with the paragraph B, the section report should be combined with the environmental report with the was one required for the purpose of the historical report is to provide the board sufficient information for the consolidation process of the required by National Historic Preservation Act with the National History Report may be filed with the board electronically. Exemptions found with the proposal do not require the report a sale or lease or transfer of the rail line purpose of the continuing the rail of the operation further the service of the transportation board approval required with the ban with any of the service is no plan with the of the alteration property of the Surface Transportation Board jurisdiction that are 50 years or older, sale lease for the transfer of the property between the corporate affiliates for their known significant chain of the operation. Trackage of the common use of the rail terminal, common the control of the track ownership of the similar with the action of the which will not substantially change the level of maintenance of the railroad property. Rulemaking policy statement of the potential declaratory operation position with a waiver of the procedure require the procedure involved with the transportation rate of the classification distribution application for the historical report with the appropriate historical preservation office with preferably at least 60 days of advance for the filing of the application petition and notice no more than later than 20 days prior to the filing of the board. Content of the historical report should contain the information required in 1057 and E1 with the following additional historic information. U.S. Coast Guard topographical map of the alternative map drawn with a scale of sufficient detail of the show of the building, the other structure of the vicinity of the proposed action, show the location of the proposed action, the location of the approximate dimension of the railroad structure. They're 50 years or older as part of the proposed action. Written description of the right of way, but they include the approximate width, the extent of the dome, with the topographical, urban, or rural character of the surrounding area, good quality of the photographs, actual photo printing of the non-photo copy of the railroad structure of the property that are 50 years older and immediately surrounding area, the good quality of the photographs, actual photograph, the rents for the photo copy of the railroad structure on the property for the over 50 years or older immediately surrounding area. The dates of the construction of the structure and the day of the extent with any of the major alterations, the extent of such information necessary. The brief narrative history with the carry with the operation from the area with the explanation of the what and the chain with the contemplate with the result of the proposed action. Brief summary of the documents for the carrier possession of the engineer drawing that might be useful. The documentation structure that is found with the historic opinion based on the readable available information railroad possession. Whether the site of the structure must meet criteria listed in the National Register of the Historical Places of Title 36 CFR 664, whether their likelihood of the archaeological resource of the previously unknown historic properties and project area based on these opinions include the consensus for the State Historic Preservation or local historic society of the university. The description based on readily available information from the railroad possession. Prior to subsurface ground distribution, full of field environmental conditions, naturally occurring man-made, the main effect of archaeological recovery, restore the swampy conditions, and or present toxic waste to the other surrounding terrain. Within 30 days of the receipt of the historical report, the State Historic Preservation Office may request the following additional information regarding the specific non-railroad owned property with the group of the property with the immediately adjacent to the railroad right away with a photograph of the specific of the property readily seen with the railroad right away and or public rights of the way with adjacent on the property with a written description and previously discovered archaeological sites, identifying location, type of the site with the prehistoric Native American. Any of these requirements may be waived with the modified by the information not necessary to determine the presence for the historic property with the effect for the proposed action on them. Historic preservation condition and of the board and rail abandonment cases are generally will not extend beyond 330 days of statutory time per period in Title 49 Standard 10904 and abandonment proceedings. 11059 Coastal Zone Management Act is requirement. Proposed action effective the land of water within the state coastal zone is designated with the pursuant of the Coastal Zone Management Act, and an applicant must comply with the following procedures or proposed action listed in subject review of the state coastal zone management plan application within the prior of this following certified with pursuant to Title 15 CFR 93057 and 93058 for the proposed action consistent with the Coastal Zone Management Plan, and activities not listed in the application for the prior filing must be certified with the actual note of the proposal given the site of the coastal zone manager with at least 40 days before the effective date of the requested action. If there is a consistency of view of the Title 15 CFR 930-454, the board with the application comply with the consistency certification procedure of the Title 15 CFR 930. Also, the board will withhold the decision to have effective date of the decision over the condition delay consummation of the action until the application is submitted. Consistencies of the certification, either the state or the concur with the consistency certification and appeal with the Secretary of the Commerce under Title 15 CFR 930-64E is successful. 1105-10 board procedures. Environmental impact statement. The pre-filing notice for the environmental impact statement is required by the contempt delay with the perspective the application must provide with the outfit of the environmental analysis was written with notice of forthcoming proposal at least 6 months prior to the filing application. 2. Notice the scope of the environmental information system with the environmental impact statement. That when the environmental impact statement is prepared with the proposed action of the board will publish the Federal Register note of the intent of the prepare of the environmental impact statement with the description of the proposed action request written with a comment for the scope of the environmental impact statement with the appropriate scope of the process for the include the meeting of the interested party of the public and the after considering the comments, the board will publish a note of the final scope of the environmental impact statement, and if the environmental impact statement is to be prepared with the cooperative of the other agencies, note that will indicate that the agencies will be responsible for various part of the statement. Notice of availability of the board will serve the copies of the board for the environmental impact statement and or appropriate summary and full final environmental impact statement, or as an appropriate summary on all properties for the all parties for the proceeding, the appropriate federal, state, local agency. The notice of the documents available to the public will be published in the Northern Environmental Protection Agency Federal Register, and the person may be obtained with a copy of the documents containing the comments. Notice available of the draft environmental impact statement that will show at the time of the submitting with written comments, which will normally be 45 days following the document with the board to decide with the hold an oral hearing of the merits of the role of the draft and the environmental impact statement that will be available to the public advance normally at least 15 days prior to the portion of the hearing relating to the environmental issue with the environmental draft the environmental impact statement to discover the relevant environmental historic preservation issues, and finally environmental impact statement will discuss the comments received in any chain for the response to them. Supplements. Any environmental impact statement that might be supplemented to whether necessary with the appropriate to address substantial change of the proposed actions, if they knew the relevant circumstance of the information, if so, no, for the commitment, comment, and procedure outlined above it will be filed with the extent practicable. All right, your environmental assessment. For the pre-ban with the environmental assessment, the Office of Environmental Agency will verify independently and in light of the environmental report and or historical report related material submitted to the applicant pursuant to 11057 and 11058 environmental assessment will discuss the relevant environmental historic preservation of the Office of Environmental Agency with a survey copy with the environmental assessment on the of the property party with receiving the appropriate federal, state, local agency while announcing availability public through the notice of the Federal Register in case of the application to receive the Title 49 Standard 10903 with the availability of the environmental assessment must be noticed by the applicant with the notice of the intent of the Title 49 CFR 115221. Deadline with the submission comments for the environmental assessment will generally within 30 days of the service of the 15 days of the case of the notice of the abandonment under Title 49 CFR 115250. With the comments received, the will be addressed the board decision of the supplemental environmental assessment may be issued appropriate. The provision provision of paragraph A1 or A4 of the section A with the surface transportation stop with the time frame with the paragraph B of the section may be waived with the modified word with appropriate. 2. Request for the waiver of 110510A with must describe the complete with the prescribed the anticipated environmental effect for the proposed action with the timing of the proposed action with the show of the all parts of the 6 month lead period with appropriate with the third-party consultation with the applicant. The amendment should live with the independent third-party consultation with the provider of the necessary environmental documentation approved with the officer of the environmental assessment or the environmental reporting requirement without the oath or otherwise apply with the waive of the railroad. However, the consultation office of environmental assessment with the improve with the scope of the consultation work with the consultation work with the environmental office of the environmental assessment supervision capable of the consulation of the act will be hand half of the board and work under the office of environmental assessment the direction of the collect with the environmental information complete with the draft of the environmental assessment draft of the environmental impact statement which was submitted to the office of environmental assessment with the review of the verification approval to encourage review of the third party consultation. Surface of environmental pleading the agency interest in part sending the material environmental historical preservation issued directly with the board, which should be sent with a copy of the applicant, copy of the board communication third party involved in the environmental historic preservation issue that will be sent with the application where the appropriate consideration decision of the environmental documentation, generally environmental assessment or environmental impact statement with the comments of the response thereto with the concern with the environmental historic preservation coastal zone management act endangered species issue but will be part of the record. Consider with the board proceeding involved with the board will decide with the environmental and historical preservation condition with the input with the authority of the issue based on the environmental record of substantial responsibility of the interstate commerce of the board will hold the decision state effective date of the exemption of the appropriate condition upon the authority of the grant with the environmental and historical preservation has not been yet resolved. And finding no significant impact on the annual exemption case of the no environmental historical preservation issue there raised in any part of the identify the office examination the Office of Environmental Agency with the assessment and the independent investigation of the board separate decision making the finding no significant impact to show that there it has formally considered the environmental record. Alright, 1105 transmittal letter of applicant reports carried with the copy of the environmental historic report of the agency done for the section 11057B with the appropriate of the state historic preservation officer with the certified by the board has done the form of the letter written can be the appendix in section form of the letter contained in the appendix section should be in transmittal environmental historical records and it should be the appendix of that and 110512 sample the newspaper notice of the abandonment exemption case. Any abandonment exemption case for the application published notice of the newspaper general circulation each for the county with the line of the located certified by the board that is done by the date of the notice for the petition exemption is filed with the notice for the alter the public of the proposed abandonment that is available to peruse alternative study for the trail even the public use and how to participate in the board proceeding some of the sample the newspaper the notice of the provided by the appendix in the section guideline of the railroads and now moving on to part 1106 procedure for the transportation consideration integrating cases involved in railroad consolidation, mergers, and acquisition control. Once again, this was a reading of your 1105 procedure implementation environmental laws.